Hey there, welcome to Talking Texas Politics with Calvin. I'm going to talk a little bit more about property taxes. Like we mentioned last time, the state legislature had ended and it had spent most of the surplus and not given that back in property tax relief. So that was a wound that was inflicted by our legislators. However, there's a self inflicted wound that many of us did to ourselves when we voted to pass school bonds. Now, over time, the school bonds have increased significantly. So you used to get a $5 million school bond. Now even the smaller schools are passing $25 million, $50 million. Some of the larger districts are passing $1 billion bonds, over $1 billion. And all of those bonds raise your property taxes. And so you are voting with those bonds to vote your property taxes to go up. You're voting that to increase your property taxes. And I think a lot of people don't connect the dots there. And there are companies who their whole sole purpose is to go into these school districts and to get their bonds passed. That's how they make their money. So a chunk of that, those multi-million-dollar bonds are going to go to these bond companies. Um, and they're really smooth about doing that. And they're really smooth about creating this narrative that if you by some chance don't support this bond, then you hate the children. And they make these comments about for the children's future, and it's all for the children, and vote for their future. And so they make this narrative that if you don't support this, you're some evil, wicked person. And so that really isn't the case. Now, keep in mind that the state of Texas funds uh, all of our public schools, and so they just increased public education funding by $8.5 billion this last legislative session. So this idea that these schools aren't getting any money is simply insane. And then, on top of that, they're taking out these multi-million dollar, uh, in some cases, $1 billion bond packages. And if schools need money, hey, let's be reasonable about stuff. Let's take a good look at what they need and give them what they need to educate the children of Texas. However, does every school need a football stadium that is equivalent to most of your college stadiums and holds 20, 25,000 people? Do they need to have a culinary arts department? Um, do they need to have uh, a big theater to teach theater? And so those are the things that they are spending this money on. And so you might think, well, what about the teachers? I promise you this, none of your bond money is going to go and raise the salary of teachers. That's just simply not the case. They will get that money from the state of Texas. So the administrators may get a lot of money. So your superintendents and those sort of folks may get money based on these bonds passing and that sort of stuff, but your average teacher is not. And another part of this narrative, this for the children piece, just drives me crazy because we continue to strap our children with debt that they probably will never be able to pay. If you combine the national debt with your state debt, with your school debt, with your city debt, we are continuing to strap our children with debt. And many of these bonds, they never pay off a bond. So they will pay on a bond for 10 years and then they'll pass another bond. And so then it'll all start to be cumulative. And so I asked ourselves, is it reasonable for us to say this is for the children when we are creating a world where our children will never be able to own their own property? They will never be able to own their own homes because the property tax bill is so significant. And so that is what you're doing when you go out and you support these bonds. So the property taxes are going to increase, they are going to continue to go up, and that little flyer that comes in your mailbox that says it'll only raise your property taxes a few dollars a month, well, let me know how that works for you, because it is going to continue to increase and you are doing it to yourselves. This is a self inflicted wound, and it is not helping our children's future. It is harming our children's future. So I hope you think about that when you go out and you look at the next bond package, because this May they did a whole round. Within the next couple of years, there's going to be a whole nother round, and they're going to continue to try and get these bonds passed. So think about that. Think about your children's future and the future that you are taking away from them, that you are stealing from them by strapping them with all this exorbitant amount of debt. So thanks for listening to me today. Appreciate you listening to Talking Texas Politics with Calvin. God bless you and God bless Texas.